Yeah, my parents lived here until they both passed away.
The land on Bonnie Hill Road in Steuben County was supposed to be Skip Smith's little slice of heaven. But life,
disappointed
on his property in the town of Thurston,
real disappointing,
has, in a way, been closer to hell.
My well came down, but it didn't come down to where it's safe to drink.
The problem is the drinking water.
Yeah, I don't even use it for my coffee.
Which tests by the environmental group Sierra Club show is contaminated with unsafe levels of perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, better known as PFAS.
At that point, I was the one that had the highest amount.
Smith and his wife drink bottled water.
The empty bottles, it's a constant battle.
The 69-year-old retired veteran spent $12,000 to dig this pond, which is also contaminated with forever chemicals. He won't eat the fish.
No, I've told everybody it's catch and release.
And won't let his grandkids swim in it. His property is surrounded by farm fields, where for decades the owners of Leo Dixon and Sons Farm spread municipal sewage sludge as fertilizer. That's the leftover byproduct of wastewater treatment. And though it's rich in nutrients, sludge also contains varying levels of PFAS, which are man-made chemicals that get into wastewater through a variety of sources. Everything from food packaging and nonstick cookware to cleaning products, medicines, and water-resistant fabrics.
People have been just putting it anywhere they can get rid of it.
I've lived here all my life.
Barbara Dart lives a half-mile from Smith. She'll wash dishes with tap water, but
we don't use this water for drinking.
Her water was also tested for PFAS, but her family already stopped drinking from their well 30 years ago, based on what was happening in the fields next door.
We would see soup. I mean, it was terrible. And the smell and the stench was outrageous.
The practice of spreading sewage sludge on farm fields,
I've been dealing with this basically all my life,
is something neighbors have complained about.
All my neighbors have bad wells.
For years.
Turned on my faucet and brown stuff starts coming out of my faucet that smells just like what's on the land.
Concerns over heavy metals in the water for decades have turned into worry about forever chemicals today. Despite complaints to the Dixons and to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, they say nothing changed.
They're the fox watching the hen house, is what they're doing.
There's no doubt that they kind of turn a blind eye to a lot of problems.
Problems which were about to get much bigger for people living in 3 Steuben County towns.
I'm disappointed that our local government would even allow this.
2,800 acres of Dixon farmland and the farm's organic operation was sold or rented to Casella Waste Systems, the Vermont-based trash hauler, composter, and landfill owner.
2022 was the first I heard of Casella purchasing the property. It was rumored before that they were looking into it.
Casella proposed hauling truckloads of sewage sludge from a treatment plant on Long Island to Steuben County, where it would be spread on farm fields.
Leave it down there someplace, you know. Why bring it to Steuben County?
That field over there forever, over there forever.
The Casella plan to spread biosolids, another word for sewage sludge, prompted Smith to write a letter to New York's governor.
I asked HOCO, what is this? Another example of the rich dumping their shit on the poor?
If it's not safe for New York City watershed, why is it safe to bring it out here?
A question which mobilized neighbors, led to local government action and subsequent pushback from Casella.
Upstate New York, it's beautiful. We love our property. We love our quiet family farm life. And to give that up because of what's going on. So we're going to fight. We're going to fight this and make it as safe as we can.
A fight that is still not over.
They haul it up here, they reconstitute it, and then they pump it in the ground.
As New York State promotes a plan to double the amount of sewage sludge spread on New York farmland by 2050.
It is all over. It's not just here.
We loved it here when we found this.
Wayne Wells bought this land in 1972.
It's so beautiful, the land.
He built this house by hand, but it hasn't been perfect.
If I could have moved this house, I would have, but I was already too far along.
Nearly 40 years ago, Wells became an activist when he says his and neighboring properties were assaulted by a neighboring farmer who spread sewage sludge on fields as fertilizer.
And when I say assaulted, that's not hyperbole.
These photos taken in those nearby fields tell the story. The farmer who owned them was permitted by New York State to spread the sludge.
All the time we were accumulating evidence that this sewage sludge was not only an aesthetic problem, but it was a health risk.
As for the impact, Wells points to the small stream behind his home.
We tested this where this stream crosses the road.
Tested for PFAS, forever chemicals, tests which came back positive for high levels.
The water that runs right through here is polluted.
For years, Wells and other neighbors have complained, but with few results until last year.
Our drinking water is being contaminated, and nobody seems to care.
Michael Volino is Thurston Town Supervisor. Thurston is one of 3 towns where 2,800 acres of farmland is located, land acquired by Vermont-based Casella Waste Systems, land where sewage sludge had been spread by the farm's longtime owners, Leo Dixon and Son.
This is a waste management company. This isn't a farming practice. This is just a way for them to get rid of waste.
It wasn't until months after the land acquisition that Thurston officials learned Casella planned to truck sewage sludge from a Long Island wastewater treatment plant and spread biosolids, another word for sludge, on fields in Thurston and the neighboring towns of Cameron and Bath.
It's not fair. I mean, this stuff was not produced in the town of Thurston. And it's mind-boggling to me that it's coming from much richer regions to be then dumped on what is a much poorer community.
A community, says Volino, where 20% of the town's 1,200 residents live on Social Security. In October of 2023, Thurston officials voted to ban the field spreading of sewage sludge. Casella sued, but later dropped the lawsuit. In neighboring Cameron, last summer, town officials also took the first step toward a sludge spreading ban. Volino believes the Steuben County legislature should take similar action.
I've appealed to our local representatives. I've appealed to our county officials. Nothing, just silence.
It is not a good idea to feed children food grown on poisoned soil.
Almost every month for 38 years,
PFAS accumulates in the specific brain regions.
Wayne Wells has used his 3 minutes during the public speaking portion of the Steuben County legislature meeting.
There are 15,000 PFAS chemicals
to try and convince local lawmakers to ban the spreading of sewage sludge on farmland.
They have done nothing in 38 years of my bringing this issue to the attention of this government.
Technically, we don't have the authority to make any stand on this.
Kelly Fitzpatrick is chair of the Steuben County legislature. Lawmakers say they can't do anything, citing New York State's Right to Farm Act, which allows farmers to use fertilizer on their fields. Biosolids are classified as fertilizer.
We can do a memorializing resolution, which is basically us saying, good morning, Governor Hochul, could you please take a more serious look at this issue? We don't like what's going on, but I don't personally think that that's worth the paper that it's written on.
That is untrue, and I challenged the supervisor to give me a legal reason for why the county couldn't act.
It's our opinion, it's the opinion of our attorneys that the county could just ban this countywide and make it easy for the towns.
Casella Waste Systems later offered to drop plants to spread sewage sludge if it could instead run a composting plant. The town of Thurston also denied that proposal.
I understand. What do you do with this stuff? But that's not, Thurston's problem.
Casella Waste Systems sent us this statement. It says, Casella is currently assessing the potential for future composting operations at Bonnie Hill Organics, while continuing our work to revitalize the facility, including the closure of existing lagoons and other improvements to the site's infrastructure. It goes on to say we're proud of the work we have accomplished in improving the site and bringing the facility up to modern standards thus far. Concluding, Casella looks forward to engaging with the appropriate government agencies for the potential restarting of the composting operations.
My God, this is paradise up here. Beautiful.
Wayne Wells is now 80 years old. The Vietnam veteran is battling cancer attributed to Agent Orange. Still, he fights on.
This field right here was heavily spread with sewage sludge.
To try and protect the drinking water and keep runoff tainted by forever chemicals out of local creeks and streams, which drain into bigger waterways and eventually municipal water supplies.
I think there's an opportunity here to turn this around.
A battle that's consumed nearly half his life, one that's finally seeing some progress.
I still have some hope that we can get this done before I croak.
It's a common practice for farmers and has been for thousands of years. Cow manure spread on fields as fertilizer.
Sludge, a byproduct of sewage treatment plants, cannot be dumped into streams, but it can be used as a natural fertilizer.
In the 1970s, the Environmental Protection Agency began promoting sewage sludge, the byproduct of water treatment plants, as a cost-effective way of doing the same. A byproduct referred to today as biosolids.
First and foremost, for farmers, it's about soil health, and biosolids brings organic material into your soils, which is needed for crop productivity.
Doug Daly is an assistant professor of environmental resources engineering at SUNY ESF in Syracuse. Biosolids contain something else, PFAS, so-called forever chemicals, which, according to the EPA, has been linked to health problems, including fertility issues, liver damage, and some forms of cancer.
I think they've emerged more recently because they're omnipresent.
Daly is working with New York State environmental officials on PFAS research, how certain compounds impact water, land, and crops.
These are topics of research, ongoing research at practically every university in the United States right now.
New York State wants to significantly increase the amount of biosolids spread on farm fields. In 2018, 22% of biosolids were recycled. The DEC's Draft Solid Waste Management Plan sets goals to increase that number to 57% by 2050. Field spreading of sewage sludge plays a major role in that. We reached out to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation with several questions regarding the field application of sewage sludge, whether it's safe, and whether those spread fields are tested for PFAS. DEC denied multiple requests for an on-camera interview, but did send a statement touting the state's efforts to regulate PFAS. DEC is reviewing the U.S. EPA's draft scientific assessment to determine how the data and final findings may be incorporated into New York State's policies and regulations to ensure the continued protection of public health and the environment.
PFAS is ruining everything, really.
Janine Burke-Wells is Executive Director of Northeast Biosolids and Residuals Association, a nonprofit that promotes the environmentally sound recycling of biosolids and other organic materials. She says treatment facilities were not built to deal with PFAS.
There's not one method that we have lawfully available to us right now that destroys or removes PFAS.
The options for disposing of sewage sludge are limited. Most of it goes to landfills now, but Burke-Wells says they are filling up. Sludge incineration turns biosolids into ash, but it no longer is seen as eco-friendly. Nebra believes field spreading is the best route.
I believe the way we're practicing it, the way my members are practicing it, it is safe, yes. No one is putting biosolids down on a field, just throwing it down there. Everything's being done very carefully.
On January 14th, the EPA, for the first time, acknowledged that harmful chemicals in sewage sludge spread on farm fields can in some cases raise the cancer risk several orders of magnitude above what the EPA considers acceptable for people who regularly consume meat, milk, and other foods grown on those farms. The federal government currently does not regulate PFAS.
And there's cancer all around these hills. Cancer, 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 cancer.
Eva Turner's property is surrounded by farm fields, which were spread with sewage sludge for decades.
Can you prove it? Nope. Is it happening? Yeah.
In December, the New York Times reported that chemical company 3M told the EPA about high levels of forever chemicals in sewage 2 decades ago.
To me, it's on their hands. They knew. And if they let this go forward anymore, it's on them.
There isn't a farmer here that doesn't think about how to leave the land better than the way he found it.
State Ag and Markets Commissioner Richard Ball says the spreading of biosolids was for years promoted as an acceptable farm practice and written into regulation that way.
So today, we look at it in a different way.
We spoke with Ball, a fruit and vegetable farmer, while he was at the New York Agriculture Society's annual meeting. He says ag commissioners from around the country are working on the PFAS issue with the EPA.
It's in DEC's realm of priorities and in their realm of responsibilities. But it's ours too, because we got to have farmland in New York.
When asked last week about the state's goals regarding biosolids in New York, Governor Kathy Hochul had this response.
Certainly the state is looking at this. The DEC is looking at this right now. Absolutely.
It's ubiquitous in nature, right? It's called a forever chemical for a reason. It's hard to break down in the environment.
In December, Steuben County lawmakers hosted an informational meeting on biosolids and PFAS.
I keep asking, people keep saying, well, what can the county do? What can the county do?
Representatives from the DEC were there.
Who specifically is doing the research on the effect of those forever chemicals?
Everybody. Yeah.
Molly Tremblay is a DEC environmental engineer who told lawmakers at the time the agency was waiting on the EPA for the updated risk assessment on forever chemicals before taking any action.
It's hard to put a blanket prohibition on something like that when we're not seeing for sure scientifically backed evidence that it's an issue everywhere.
It's pervasive in the environment, but it's pervasive in the environment because we've put it there.
Jean Bonital is director of Cornell Waste Management Institute. She's worked with farmers for 35 years, including some who spread biosolids.
I feel that at least there should be a temporary ban or a couple more years of moratorium on this.
At least until more research on the effects of PFAS in biosolids is done.
If I go look for PFAS anywhere, I will find them in one form or another.
That is what Daly is working on. The DEC gave SUNY ESF $500,000 for a 3-year study looking at what's going in and coming out of wastewater treatment plants, including what's in the biosolids.
Yeah, even the experts don't know all the answers right now.
An issue that's getting a closer look from many angles.
It's a management issue. We have to do something with it because wastewater treatment plants are at the end of the pipe. We flush our toilet and we don't think about what happens to it.
You've got to love farming to stay in farming.
That's why Sue Hunter stays on her farm in Unity, Maine.
It's a beautiful piece of land. It used to be an old potato field. As a kid, I used to pick potatoes on this field.
She met her husband, Alan, not far from here.
I was milking cows on my uncle's dairy farm.
They were married for 39 years and bought this land in 2008, the year before Alan was diagnosed with cancer.
It's been crazy.
Alan died in 2015. The loss was just the first blow.
That's what angers me, is they knew about it.
Forever chemicals, PFAS, from industrial contaminants Hunter says were in the sewage sludge that they spread on their fields as fertilizer.
The state came to us and said that, this is free fertilizer, we're going to spread it for you, it's not going to do anything to you. And here we are now.
2/3 of the 100 tillable acres of land on her farm are contaminated and no longer farmable.
We are the ones that are suffering the consequences.
About a half hour away in Fairfield, Maine,
it was devastating.
Ejid Dosty faced a similar situation.
Well, the first thing that went through my mind is there's no way in hell there can be a chemical in the milk.
His herd of over 400 cows tested over 3 times the allowable safe level of perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, the man-made chemical compound used as a water repellent in a number of products.
No, it just devastated that whole situation here.
On top of that,
there's 200 acres from here on that's contaminated. You can't see the rest of the field.
His land, spread with sewage sludge by the farm's previous owner, is no good.
So we're stuck with land that's not worth anything. So no, it's a nightmare.
Dosty now raises beef cattle, fed with clean hay from another farm. He has no idea what the future holds.
Don't hold much, not much at all. We can't make a living raising beef. It's not profitable. That's what we're trying to figure out right now, what we can do to stay profitable.
In 2022, Maine became the first state in the nation to ban the spreading of sewage sludge on farm fields.
Sludge is incalculably toxic. We will never know what's going down the drain.
Like Dosty, when Adam Nordell found out, it was already too late.
There are too many of us, unfortunately.
Nordell and his wife owned and operated Songbird Farm for 7 years, growing certified organic vegetables and grains. They sold their harvest at places like the annual Common Ground Country Fair in Unity, as well as local farm markets and their own pantry share. This is what it looks like today, abandoned out of fear for his family's health.
It's unreconcilable. It's unreconcilable.
The previous landowner had also spread sewage sludge. Nordell's well water tested 400 times over the safe limit for PFAS.
I was so heartbroken and outraged when I learned about what had happened to my farm and what had happened to my friends' farms. And the way in which the Maine food supply had been put at risk.
Since the state of Maine began testing, nearly 80 farms were found to be contaminated by PFAS.
The farms in this area especially were really willing to speak out and be vocal about what was happening.
Tricia Rouleau is Farm Network Director for Maine Farmland Trust, a nonprofit that works to protect farmland and administers a PFAS emergency relief fund set up by Maine state lawmakers for farmers affected by contamination.
I think we've realized through this process that that safety net for farms is critically important. If you're going to start testing, it's clear that the likelihood of finding PFAS contamination if you're doing statewide testing is pretty high.
In late 2021, Maine released a map which showed 700 sites that had been licensed by the state to spread sewage sludge. The state systematically tested each one. More than 450 wells had higher than acceptable levels of PFAS. Recently, the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife announced a do not eat advisory for wild turkey and deer hunted in 3 spots, including Unity and Fairfield. One hotspot includes land surrounding Casella Organics' Hawk Ridge Compost Facility in Unity Township, built on the site of what was once a farm, where Maine DEP groundwater sample data shows PFAS levels more than 6,000 times higher than the state's safe drinking water limit.
When a farm becomes contaminated, the PFAS doesn't necessarily doesn't respect property boundaries, right?
No longer living on his farm, Nordell is now campaign manager for Defend Our Health, an organization working to reduce people's exposure to toxic chemicals.
And that was a really transformative experience to go through something terrible and then use that experience to try to protect other people. It's sort of the best thing you can do in a bad situation sometimes.
Nordell is just one of many Maine farmers who have found new purpose in advocacy. Sue Hunter invited researchers from the University of Maine to her farm.
My goal in this is to bring back the farm as a farm.
It takes a lot of work. Experiments on plots of land like these planted last year focus on how PFAS moves through certain crops like this corn.
It didn't get into the ears, but you couldn't use the stalk.
While studying potential ways to remediate forever chemicals.
Instead of, packing up and leaving, which I could have done easily, farming is in my blood and I didn't want to give it up.
Hunter still holds on to the dream of passing the family farm to the next generation. Despite all she's been through, she's hopeful.
We have a problem and we need to solve it.
I've been here for all my life.
Tim Hargrave owns a small farm in Cameron, Steuben County. He has some chickens. Hargrave had hoped to raise organic beef cattle here.
There's a couple of tributaries on its way down to this point here.
But he can't. A stream which runs behind his home is contaminated with PFAS, so-called forever chemicals. Farmland at the top of the hill was spread with a human waste byproduct for decades.
I'm sure you've seen cows. Any cow you have, once they get a water source, they're going to stop and drink. You're not going to be able to push them through there.
Hargrave and several of his neighbors fought hard when in 2022, Vermont-based Casella Waste Systems acquired nearly 3,000 acres of farmland with plans to spread sewage sludge hauled up from a wastewater plant on Long Island.
You couldn't do this down on Long Island. There'd be too much uproar, too many people affected.
In the past year, the town of Cameron issued a moratorium on spreading sludge on fields. The neighboring town of Thurston, a total ban.
I mean, if they figured out a way to filter out the PFAS, right? But to date, they haven't.
All the tanks here, it's basically gravity treatment. All it's going to do is allow the solids to settle. So anything that sinks, we remove. Anything that floats, we remove.
Angel French is chief operator of Watertown's wastewater treatment plant, which produces 4,000 wet tons of biosolids a year. Some of it goes for beneficial use, hauled out to about a half dozen local farms where it's used as fertilizer.
Everything I've heard from our farmers has been a positive feedback.
The sludge contains low levels of PFAS. French says despite all the science and technology to make the water which leaves this plant safe, the technology does not currently exist to remove PFAS from biosolids.
PFAS is everywhere. We are a pass-through facility. We don't generate it. We do everything we can do to minimize the amount of PFAS that's actually coming through our facility. We treat 10 million gallons of water a day. There has been no science that has shown the ability to be able to remove those PFAS at that quantity.
Obviously, treating it at the end is going to be the most expensive, the most time-consuming, the hardest to do. So getting it out at the source, I know I'm a broken record, but that is what's most critical to us.
As the DEC considers expanding field spreading of biosolids, weighing it against a new EPA warning over cancer threats in products consumed from fields and farms where sludge tainted with PFAS was spread, some lawmakers have renewed calls for a statewide ban.
Literally, it's the worst option for what we do with biosolids that have PFAS in it, is choosing to put it on our farmland.
Assemblymember Anna Kellis introduced a bill banning biosolids sale and spreading. The bill has been stuck in committee. Kellis also wants drug and chemical makers to be more transparent about the presence of PFAS and what they make.
Part of the issue is that it's in everything, and that's what people don't realize.
If they put legislation on the wastewater treatment plants where we have to start removing PFAS or other chemicals, it's going to fall onto the taxpayers and not where the stuff actually originated.
Scientists and private companies are racing to find ways to remove PFAS from biosolids. Cornell University is working with a Cayuga County farmer on a biochar kiln, which right now just uses cow manure, but researchers are studying to see if it might work on removing forever chemicals from human sewage sludge. Farmers in several states have been impacted. In Texas, a handful of farmers and ranchers sued the EPA over PFAS contamination in their livestock and on their land where sludge was used as fertilizer.
I think we need to be, at the very least, feathering the brakes right now, if not taking urgent action to protect the health of the farming community.
In Maine, where the state enacted a ban in 2022, much of the poisoned sewage sludge came from industrial waste. It's a cautionary tale.
It's clear from the experience of, what's happened in Maine that PFAS contamination should be taken seriously and that there are some serious impacts of spreading these materials on land.
Impacts being studied by Maine researchers to try and clean up the land and water tainted by dangerous levels of PFAS.
We all depend on clean farmland to produce healthy, clean food. If you poison a farm, you've really set in motion something terrible.
In Steuben County, where our investigation began, winter is the quiet time. There appears to be little activity at the site acquired by Casella Waste Systems, which wanted to truck tons of sludge from Long Island and spread it on fields here. The town of Thurston's ban, fueled by pushback from neighbors, foiled those plans. The town of Cameron, which already has a moratorium on the spreading of sewage sludge, is poised to become the second Steuben County town to enact an outright ban. A law has been drafted and a public hearing will be held before it's voted on.
We're pretty much set, I think. I don't think that they can seriously challenge what we're doing and win.
A fight over a practice once deemed safe that's proving in many communities across the country to be anything but.
You take it up here to these little small counties and they don't have no money to fight it. They don't, there's not enough voice to really try to stop it. They just think we're dumb and they're gonna walk all over us. But we fought back.
In Thurston, Steuben County, Seth Voorhees, Spectrum News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest news and weather updates every 10 minutes and more. We'll see you then.